So proud of our kids. Thank you. Thank you. Well done. Her mother volunteered her to do that. You've done good. Please. That's very good. The basic message and structure of today's sermon is the difference between Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, and what I call Pax Christus, the peace of Christ. Pax Romana is that peace that was created. Caesar Augustus used it on buildings, saying that it is through our conquering, it is through our victory, it is through our violence that we are able to create peace in the world. And Pax Christus, as you can well imagine, is saying no. Peace is through love, it's through justice, it's through service, it's through forgiveness. These are the poles of belief in those days, and it is also the poles of belief in our world today. Anna was talking about teaching us, telling us the story, as we all went back into that time with her, about how this little girl, who had the most valuable possession of all, her pet, donkey colt, being taken by these men and led away. And as you can imagine, you would be terrified. Here is your most prized, it's not a possession, your friend, being taken away. And then they turn around and they smile and say, "This is for Jesus." And she had heard enough about Jesus to know that she could trust these men. How many of us have the ability to trust that much? Thank God she had that trust. Business writer Stephen Covey has a famous saying about leadership in our world. What he says is, I can tell what is wrong when leadership fails. It is one of two things together. That is character and competence. The leader must have character and competence. And I would agree with that. However, what is your measuring stick for character? What is your measuring stick for competence? This is where Pax Romana and Pax Christus come into play. If you believe the world is based on Pax Romana, then character will be judged on that. Competence will be judged on that. If, however, you believe in the peace of Christ, you believe that character and competence will be based on love, on justice, on service, and forgiveness. We've had some very difficult times in the past few weeks and months. Jesus was dealing with a people that were shouting, "Hosanna! Hosanna in the highest heaven!" And Hosanna means, save us. Save us. Who did they need saving from? Basically, the systems that were in place, put in place by Rome. Roman occupation. And it was the financial system that was problematical. See if you find any parallels in today's world. What happened was the Romans came in, and instead of barter systems, the small farmers had to use coins in order to sell their wares. So if they ran out of money, they could not buy the seed for the following year. They had to borrow the seed for the following year. And As farmers, you know it's a gambling game. There are always years that go bad. And so if you do not have the money to pay for seed, then you cannot grow the next year, and you are slammed into poverty, and the bank takes your land. It happened then, it has happened today in our world, hasn't it? So what was happening is everyone was now becoming, instead of a subsistence farmer, they were becoming day laborers and slaves. And their families were becoming day laborers and slaves. Save us! And the Sanhedrin were trying to keep the peace by honoring what the Romans put into place. I'm not going to blame them totally here, folks. This was a system that was based on oppression and a financial system that was not working for the people. Do you hear some of the parallels today? I believe I do. And in the past few weeks, we've learned about what happened with Cambridge Analytica and Facebook, and a lot of the trust that we may have had for Amazon and Google and Facebook and all these other sites have really gone down more than a few pegs, because now we realize that they have not been watching. Their competence has been lacking, or did they know about it and let it go anyway, and then their character is called into question. Now, I know that people have been taking information about our buying habits for decades. Credit cards companies have been doing this, okay? One of the problems was much of this information was taken without our say-so. And it's even that I'm not as concerned about as how it is used in our world. That information is then turned around and put back out to you, directed specifically to you, to affirm our biases. Whatever bias you have, they send information out to you to affirm your biases and then to inflame them. Inflame our biases. If you've ever found yourself yelling at the computer, you know what I'm talking about, right? I know I have. And they do that purposefully. They do that to encourage you to vote or to refrain from voting. Hence, instead of having people attempting to live by what I would call Pax Christus, where we are all loving one another, we're all serving one another, forgiving one another, fighting for justice in the world, we are slammed to the poles of the continuum. And we are fighting like cats and dogs, Pax Romana, violence. It is a great danger to ourselves as individuals. I know my heart rate goes up a bit, but it's also a great danger to our democracy and our world. That is what we are fighting about. And then yesterday, yesterday. It was a cool day, I'll grant you, but there was no snow or rain. And we began our march. About 15 or 20 of us, I don't know, because there were a lot of people that didn't join us, but I saw them smattered in the crowd. I say the crowd was a little over 1,000 people. We started in Peace Plaza, and we marched for about a mile over behind the Arts Center, in that little park back there. And we were chanting, you know, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Not one more. Not one more. I taught a little song. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Put one foot in front of the other and lead with love. Don't give up hope. You're not alone. Don't give up hope. Keep moving on. So we were singing and we were chanting, and then the pièce de résistance was after the mayor and the chief of police spoke. The kids spoke. And just like Anna, I was so proud of her. I rehearsed her once last night over the phone, and usually I stop people and say, oh, we would do this and this. It was perfect. said, oh, okay. Great. Well, those speakers yesterday were just marvelous. So articulate, so well able to say, enough is enough. And you saw it on the television with other speakers around the country. And what they were doing was something similar to what Jesus was doing back in the day. This was street theater, folks. This was not meant to go out there and be a conquering army. This was to go out there and say, enough is enough. This Pax Romana is killing us. This violence is killing us. We need, we want, we desire peace. We desire love. We desire life. And that is what they were marching for, we were marching for. That is what our kids have been marching for. And that is what I believe Jesus was marching for on his little donkey, juxtaposing the Pax Romana and the Pax Christus. When Jesus rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, he was revealing that the reign of God is in stark contrast to the reign of Rome and every other political system that seeks triumphant victory by influencing people through violence and coercion with power and weapons. The gospel of Jesus subverts the politics of violence because the gospel is in the politics of humility, service, justice, forgiveness, and nonviolent love that embraces all people, but especially those we call our enemies. Tragically, there are those who would rather live by the politics of Rome, not the politics of Jesus. Whether we are Republicans or Democrats, American, Chinese, or Russian, whenever we seek to influence others through coercion and violence, we are following the politics of Rome. Fortunately, Jesus revealed the alternative. He called it the kingdom of God. And I know that some of you will disagree, and that's okay. But anytime we have human interaction on a two-person level or more, it is political. It is political. It was and is a political way of life, Pax Christus, based not on triumphant violence, but rather humble service. It plays out in our social interactions, which on the meta level is political. The politics of Jesus makes sure everyone has daily bread. It seeks to forgive debts and sins. It avoids the temptation to commit evil against our neighbors, and it calls us into a life of forgiveness. But this is risky work, isn't it? We know that the politics of Jesus led him to Good Friday, where he suffered and he died. And yet he stayed true to the kingdom of God, speaking words of forgiveness even as he was murdered. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. The kingdom of God is not just a call to a personal ethic. It is a political ethic of nonviolence. Indeed, the politics of Jesus seeks to influence our personal lives, but it also seeks to influence our social and political lives. Wherever personal or political systems use violence, power, and coercion to be triumphant and victorious, Jesus beckons us to follow him into a different kind of politics, into the kingdom of God that lives and dies by love, justice, service, and forgiveness. And that is why that little girl trusted those men who took her donkey colt. She saw that they and Jesus, as followers of Jesus, were also living a life of love, justice, service, and forgiveness. And so she could trust. She could trust their character. She could trust their competence in this world. We just sang to all glory, laud, and honor the children have been leading us, to whom the lips of children made sweet hosannas sing. From the lips of our children, they are saying, save us. Let us go out and do likewise with Pax Christus.